This is called The First Tuesday We Talk About the World. Connie opened the door and let me in. Morrie was in a wheelchair by the kitchen table, wearing a loose cotton shirt and even looser black sweatpants. They were loose because his legs had um, atrophied beyond normal clothing size. You get two hands around his thighs and have your fingers touch. Have he been able to stand, he would have been no more than 5 feet tall, and he'd probably have to fit into a sixth grader's jeans. I got you something, I announced, holding up a big brown paper bag. I had stopped on my way from the airport at a nearby supermarket and purchased some turkey, potato salad, macaroni salad, and bagels. I knew there was plenty of food at the house, but I wanted to contribute something. I was so powerless to help Morrie otherwise, and I remembered his fondness for eating. Ah, so much food, he sang. Well, now you have to eat with me. We sat at the kitchen table surrounded by wicker chairs. This time, without the need to make up 16 years of information, we slid quickly into the familiar waters of our old college dialogue. Maury asking questions, listening to my replies, stopping like a chef to sprinkle in something I'd forgotten or hadn't realized. He asked about the newspaper strike, and true to form, he couldn't understand why both sides didn't simply just communicate with each other and solve their problems. I told him not everyone was as smart as he was. Occasionally, he had to stop to use the bathroom, a process that took some time. Connie would wheel him to the toilet, then lift him from the chair and support him to urinate into a beaker. Each time he came back, and he looked tired. Do you remember when I told Ted Koppel that pretty soon someone was going to have to wipe my butt? He said. I laughed. You don't forget a moment like that. Well, I think the day's coming, and that really bothers me. Why? Because it's the ultimate sign of dependency, someone wiping your own bottom, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to enjoy the process. Enjoy it? Yes, after all, I get to be a baby one more time. That's a unique way of looking at it. Well, I have to look at life uniquely now. Let's face it, I can't go shopping. I can't go to the bank. I can't take care of the bank accounts. I can't take out the garbage, but I can sit here with my dwindling days and look at what I think is important in life. I have both the time and the reason to do that. So I said in a reflexively cynical response, I guess to find the key to the meaning of life is to stop taking out the garbage. He laughed, and I was relieved that he did. As Connie took the plates away, I noticed a stack of newspapers that had obviously been read before I got there. You bother keeping up with the news? I asked. Yes, Morrie said. Do you think that's strange? Do you think because I'm dying I shouldn't care what happens in the world? Maybe, he sighed. Maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't care. After all, I won't be around to see how it all turns out. But it's hard to explain, Mitch. Now that I'm suffering, I feel closer to people who suffer than I ever did before. The other night on TV, I saw people in Bosnia running across the street, getting fired upon, killed, innocent victims, and I just started to cry. I feel their anguish as if it were my own. I don't know any of these people, but how can I put up with this? I'm almost drawn to them. His eyes got moist, and I tried to change the subject, but he dabbed his face and waved me off. I cry all the time now, he said. Never mind. Amazing, I thought. I worked in the news business and I covered stories where people died. I interviewed grieving family members and I even attended their funerals. I never cried. Morrie, for the suffering of the people half a world away, was weeping. Is this what comes at the end? I wondered. Maybe death is the great equalizer, and one thing that can finally make strangers shed a tear for one another. Morrie honked loudly into the tissue. This is okay with you, isn't it? Men crying. Sure, I said too quickly. He grinned. Aw, Mitch, I'm going to loosen you up. One day I'm going to show you that it's okay to cry. Yeah, I said. Yeah, he said back. We laughed because he used to say the same thing nearly 20 years earlier, mostly on Tuesdays. In fact, Tuesdays had always been our day together. Most of the courses with Morrie were on Tuesday. He had office hours on Tuesday, and when I wrote my senior thesis, which was pretty much Morrie's suggestion right from the start, it was on Tuesdays that we sat together by his desk or in the cafeteria or on the steps of Perlman Hall going over the work. So it seemed only fitting that we were going back to our Tuesdays. Here in the house with the Japanese maple out front, as I ready to go, I mentioned to Morrie. We're Tuesday people, he said. Tuesday people, I repeated. Morrie smiled. Mitch, you ask about caring for people, and I don't even know. But can I tell you the thing I'm learning most with this disease? What's that? The most important thing in life is to learn how to give out love and to not. The most important thing in life is to learn how to give out love and to let it come in. His voice dropped to a whisper. Let it come in. We think that we don't deserve love. We think that if we let it in, we'll become too soft. But a wise man named Levine said it right. He said, love is the only rational action. Love is the only rational act. He repeated it carefully and pausing for effect. Love is the only rational act. I nodded like a good student and exhaled weakly. I leaned over and gave him a hug, and then, although it is not really like me, I kissed him on the cheek, and I felt his weakened hands on my arms and the thin stubble of his whiskers brushing my face. So you'll come back next Tuesday, he whispered. The chapter ends, and now it's time for a flashback. He enters the classroom, sits down, and doesn't say anything. He looks at us, and we look at him. At first, there are a few giggles, and only Morrie only shrugs, and eventually a deep silence falls, and we begin to notice the smallest sounds, the radiator humming in the corner, and the nasal breathing of one of the fat students. Some of us are agitated. When is he going to say something? We squirm, check our watches. A few students look out the window, trying to be above it all. This goes on a good 15 minutes before Morrie finally breaks in with a whisper. What's happening here, he says. And slowly a discussion begins, as Morrie has wanted all along about the effects of silence on human relations. Why are we embarrassed by silence? What comfort do we find in all that noise? I am not bothered by the silence for all the noise I make with my friends. I'm still not comfortable talking about my feelings in front of others, especially not my classmates. I could sit in the quiet for hours that I could sit in the quiet for hours if that is what the class demanded. On my way out, Morrie stops me. You didn't say much today, he remarks. I don't know. I just didn't have anything to add. I think you have a lot to add, he adds. In fact, Mitch, you remind me someone I know who also likes to keep things to himself when he was younger. Who? Me. So sorry, Onyx, my dog just went like completely nuts during that. Super sorry.